What is up, everybody? Solomon here. Super excited to be with Genfinity, interviewing a multitude of projects across Web3. Really excited to have the team from Panjea out of the Aleph AZERO ecosystem with us today. I've got Kieran and I've got Lee. Always like to kick these off with a little bit of an introduction. So, Kieran, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your role within Panjea, that would be fantastic.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm just getting ourselves like the video stream we shared on our own X account. So yeah, I'm Kieran. I'm the kind of creative leader of Panjea. I was a writer, an online writer and content producer and music journalist and all these kind of things for a long time. I was very dissatisfied with the models that were out there for creative people that seemed to sort of take all the value away from them. And as a result, I kind of came up with Panjea. Been working on it for a few years now. It really took off when I met this guy who's also on the call with me, who's really our crypto expert, and that's Lee Kerr. So over to you, Lee.
Yeah, well, I'm Lee. I hate the term crypto expert, but OG maybe is probably a better term. Yeah, been in crypto since 2013, so feels like 50 years versus 14, 15. But yeah, it's been a journey. I was a top 50 witness on Steam It, so I've got as well as like the crypto side of things, I've got a lot of experience in the first sort of inklings of social fi that came around then. Saw all the problems that came with it, not just from the tokenomics, but just from the problems with social media online. Like they just copied the Web2 model, so they copied all of the problems and then exaggerated them with tokenomics. So that's my journey, and yeah, it's been a crazy few years with this Panjea journey, but good to see like the responses we're getting back. It's refreshing.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to take this maybe in a couple of different ways, Kieran, because you and I have had conversations before, and we go down the rabbit hole all the time here with some of the problems that exist out there, not only in blockchain, but just kind of with the way that our data is being leveraged, and the intellectual kind of property aspects, the creator economy stuff that is just slowly dying and dying and dying. So maybe, Kieran, the way that we start this out is like, you come from an interesting background. If you maybe just, what are your views on creativity now in 2024 versus the ways that we interact with some of these platforms that are just kind of stripping away our ability to create in meaningful ways?
Like, it's like interesting because like everything in marketing and production is kind of cyclical. And when I first got into music journalism, the kind of mode would be that you'd be given tickets to a concert and some drink vouchers, and you'd get to interview this like top music star. And you'd say, well, what about the money? And they'd say, don't worry about the money, do it for the exposure. You can turn the exposure into money later. And what it seems like is the internet has been really good at pushing this exposure model. Like, we're not going to pay you for anything, but look at all this exposure you're going to get. You're going to give us your content for free, and we're going to give you this massive exposure. And people have kind of like worked on that model for a long time, but it has meant over time their creativity is valueless, and the thing that's become really valuable is like the broadcast. So I was looking at a video on LinkedIn just before I came on this stream, and it was about a guy who went and found TikTok creators with 0 followers. He got them to do like sing happy birthday or to send a present to someone, and then he cut up their content, repackaged it, put it out on his own TikTok. And one of these guys has got 240,000 followers from doing one of these videos. Now he's claiming, look, it's not about your creativity. It's not about your product. It's not about your content. It's about what you do. And I'm like, no. It's about the fact that one guy's got 2.5 million followers. And when he does this promotional video, 10% of those followers follow this guy. So is it about creativity or is it about broadcast? And it seems like broadcast is winning. And that's interesting, and it's been great that people have been able to access all that broadcast, but we're now seeing the effects of this, and that is that content is kind of just losing quality and going through the floor, because once people have got the audiences, it's becoming harder and harder to find the good stuff. And if people have already got the captive audience, they're kind of like, well, we can just fire any old rubbish at them and they'll put up with it. And I think that's
I'm curious, Lee, from your stance too. You've been in the blockchain space for a while. I feel like I've, I don't know how. When did you get into blockchain?
2013.
2013. So you were
Yeah,
4 years before me, and I know from my stance, like looking out across even something like Twitter and X, especially with like the advent, the initiation of like bots and things like that, that it's like really difficult for people to even navigate this space. And the quality of content, like it's almost impossible to figure out what is quality, what is real versus what is, I mean, you know this as well as I do. You don't even have to bot something. And if you put out something hypey, at the end of the day, it's going to get X amount of impressions, way more likes than something that's authentic. I would love maybe just your insight on, how you still navigate this space in something like the Wild West of Twitter and X, and where you see it all going. It's just becoming more and more difficult.
Yeah, it's 100% becoming more difficult. Before, like, and I've also seen like the evolution of crypto bros, crypto people. You never, back then, everyone was anonymous. They were just a username on a forum. Generally, what we would do is go to Bitcoin Talk, trawl through all of the announcements, whatever, read all the white papers, check out the GitHubs. It was very easy, but it was a lot easier to root out scams, rubbish, rugs, all that sort of stuff, because everything was there. Like, it was all announced ahead of time. We could absorb it. Everyone was super into the tech and the change it was making and the impact it was having. And just each bull and bear cycle has sort of dumbed it down more and more. And it's just like, it's almost it literally is a casino. There are obviously some really good projects out there, great tech, great teams, like building really, really amazing stuff. The problem is we've kind of seen the weapon or the weaponization of tokenomics in favor of corporates. So these projects, in order to build all these crazy big projects with grand claims and super high performance, they've had to sell themselves basically to the corporate VCs. So yes, they're sitting on a big treasury of money, but with all the token unlocks and all this sort of stuff, there's not enough speculation or retail investment to cope with that. So people are they're just staying away from the serious stuff because it's too scary. If you've got like a 400 million unlock, why would you want to buy that token? They're just going to get destroyed. Like, so they're doing ironically less and less research, and it's more about just like, oh, this looks fun, this looks whatever, I'll put some money in it, hopefully I'll become a millionaire. So, and like with the rise of AI and scammers not getting any police attention, or very rarely, it has become really tricky to navigate, and you don't know what's real, what's legitimate. It takes a lot of research still.
100%. I mean, I remember back in, well, even in 2020, doing deep dives and using, the tools that were out there. Like, you could still go through, the coin market caps and coin geckos of the world. And like, I think there was maybe 10 or 12, I want to say like 10 or 12. Actually, I want to say at the end of 2020, it was like maybe 7,000 different digital assets on coin market cap. And then if you looked 6 months later, I think it went up to like 20,000. And if you look on anybody that goes onto coin market cap right now and tries to look at how many digital assets there are, it's like, I think it's like in the millions. It's like, it's absolutely insane. So the ability to kind of navigate has certainly gone down. And I know, Kieran, we were kind of talking about this before. AI has been around for decades, obviously, but you look at kind of the Chat GPT moment, and everybody's kind of leveraging AI for different things. You get into even something like Adobe leveraging AI, like leveraging our content for other content. What are your some of your thoughts around the rise of AI and how that's going to even, I would say, like steamroll what we're dealing with right now as far as stripping away people's value and intellectual property? Where do you see it going if something doesn't kind of shift?
I think people have put a lot of content and had a lot of faith in the internet, and at least when you had your own website, Google would send traffic to your website. You put content up, you styled that content for Google's SEO algorithms, and Google would send you traffic. Now with ChatGPT, it scraped that content. You ask ChatGPT a question. I've done it quite a few times. I almost prefer it to Google. And it gives you great answers, but it doesn't tell you where those great answers have come from. And the people who created those great answers aren't rewarded for their work. And I think that's the danger with ChatGPT and these large language models, that they're just content scrapers, and we're kind of being sold them as if they are sentient, as if they're intelligent, as if they can work stuff out. But I think they're more like, you've seen that thing where people say, bees are really clever because bees can return from 4 miles away and find their hives. But if you move their hives like 3 meters, they can't find their hive. And I think that's what LLMs are like. They're very good at predicting based on the fact that they've seen tons and tons of bits of media that are similar to the piece of media that you're requesting what the next word should be. But it doesn't actually, it's not actually creating it in the same way that a human's creating content. And I think that's the danger. I think the danger is that it takes people's work and it devalues it. It's like the internet is like this machine that's been designed over time by technology to extract the value from creativity. It's really sort of squeezing the last drops out now. I think that's what AI is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always think with the Chat GPT stuff, like, you know, to use it as a tool is great, and I mean, even I use it to an extent now. But what I always get kind of concerned about is, like, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen like The Social Dilemma, with how they leveraged, you know, social media to slowly, or that, you know, you take a step back and you realize that the amount of power that these social media kind of companies have to be able to slowly affect potential change in the way that we think about things, whether it's political or whether it's whatever it may be over time. And you add AI into that mix, and like, okay, I put an input into Chat GPT and I get an output, but what's going into the inputs that are giving me that output within Chat GPT in the first place? Like, are there any sort of like narratives that are being driven behind the scenes? Where's the information coming from? Where's the data being scraped from for these LLMs to go into these models? And that's where it really starts getting kind of hairy. And it's like, when I look at something like this space and blockchain and intellectual property and the creator economy stuff and real research and all this stuff, there's like a huge problem that exists right now. You know, we talk about mass adoption of blockchain and digital assets and distributed ledger technology all the time. And I always have to ask myself, like, when you start adding, you know, we see what does well on a platform like X and Twitter, and we see what gets a ton of likes and clicks. And it's normally not the stuff that in order to succeed, you would want to be paying attention to. But it's the stuff that gets the most clicks, and it's the stuff that gets the most likes and retweets and shares and all this stuff. So like, you add all this different technology in the mix that might just propagate that even further. And it's just like the attention economy stuff is really kind of scary. So like, I'm curious where you guys see some of the solutions, Lee and Kieran, because I know with Panjea over time, and we don't have to get super in depth into the platform yet, but like, what are some of the solutions out there? Because Lee, you mentioned there's been other SocialFi platforms out there, and I think that we saw them, I would say, primarily starting to stem up, let's say like 2020 timeframe. And a lot of that stuff kind of went by the wayside. And now we are seeing kind of more of that stuff start to pop up. Now, I've heard people say it is 100% where this space goes, where it has to go. But I'm curious, if we go to like social finance and creator economy stuff to kind of revisit the original ethos of the internet, how do we do it in a way that's meaningful? And how do we do it in a way that people start to care about it? Because I think that's the big thing, is how do you get people to care?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I was reasonably successful on Steemit, which is basically Reddit on the blockchain, but with rubbish tokenomics, basically a Ponzi, because all the rewards you had to power up into your account to give your vote power any kind of weight. So you were kind of incentivized not to cash out, because obviously the more you cashed out, the less your vote would be worth and the less clout you had. There was no maximum supply, so everyone's got hyperinflated into oblivion. But at the beginning, it was brilliant because it was, for once, like people were freed from like the advertising model, the big corporate guy in the back poking him in the back going, go mention the sponsor, and like you saw the creativity you saw on there was brilliant. Like I started my own motocross club, so I designed the kit, the graphics, started going to races with me and my mate, both. Do you know what I mean, like our own little kind of factory racing team, and I did that all through my earnings on Steam. Then you saw other things like this guy built a life-size blue whale in a Norway harbour, and whenever anyone would send Steam to that guy's wallet address, it would splurt water out the top of it, and he had like a 24/7 live cam. And it was just things like that you just don't see nowadays because everyone's stopping their content in the middle to tell you they're sponsored by Squarespace or Manscaped or whatever it may be. And not just that, but the whole content is around selling you either like, oh god, sorry, I'm getting phoned and pinged left, right, centre. Yeah, it's all focused around the advertising model and the corporates behind you. They're all steering you to a lifestyle or a product. So we need to get rid of that. And with Panjea, we've got what we call proof of life, which is effectively an encrypted KYC. So you have to KYC, but that's encrypted. It's never shared with anyone, unless obviously you post anything nefarious, then it has to be. But so you can cryptographically prove that you're a human and you're interacting with a human and not a bot, because that was the problem with Steemit as well. It was rife with bots. In the end, it was bots running bots, and like same thing: upvote attacks, downvote attacks, plagiarized content attacks. And it's exactly because it's a Web 2 model like Twitter. You can just bot spam everyone into oblivion. So Panjea solved that by having that proof of life and subscription model. So it's kind of a walled garden where you can believe there's no need to post fake news. There's no need to lead someone towards products. There's no need to do that because you're getting paid just for your content. So it kind of frees you back up to be a creative in the traditional sense.
Yeah. Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like with what Lee is saying, like he's almost saying is that and you talked about this, as you said, look, the imperceptible changes in behavior. I think the problem with the internet today is that the internet is slowly becoming so that everything is an advert. Everything is like, because there is no value for the content, everything is an advert. And like, you know, on the US dollar, we're not in America, me and Lee are in the UK, but it says in God we trust on the back. Well, kind of crypto is like in hype we trust. And everything that goes on within Crypto X seems to me that it creates hype. The coin price is a direct measure of that hype. The crypto industry, from like looking at it from the outside, almost seems like it's become a way of valuing hype, a way of almost monetizing hype, and that's what it looks like. And so therefore, every piece of crypto content is an advert for this hype. How do we hope that Panjea will change this? This is like the $1 million question. We believe that if we create the conditions where people can have a different internet, then those that believe in a different kind of internet will come and use it. One of the things that Lee talks to me about is like, I often will get very, very kind of set in this kind of like change the world vision about Panjea. And I'll say, I want people to use it like this, Lee, and I want people to use it like that. And Lee will come back to me and say, it's not for you to say, Kieran, it's for the community to say. And that's the point of Panjea, is that we're creating this space for the community to come and do something different. If we try and tell them what that different thing is that they need to do in the space, we're not giving them the space. We're doing exactly the same as the totalitarian agencies that we're trying to defy. So what we're doing with Panjea is we're creating that space and saying to people, come into this space, make it your community, make up the rules, and see what happens in this kind of experimental fashion when creativity is put first and creativity has a value. And that value is directly returned to the creators, of course, in terms of tokens. So it's a real...
This is the thing, because like you've seen the cost of a free internet. I mean, even successful YouTubers, successful Spotify artists, they don't earn enough. They've all got Patreons. They've all got, unfortunately, some of them now got OnlyFans. I mean, like they're literally, that's the only way that they can scrape a living out of the current situation on the internet. And I always say to Kieran, like 99% of crypto is an answer looking for a question. It is very, very amazingly like brilliant tech, but no one needs it in for the most part. So with Panjea, we not only wanted to create like a safe space where you're freed from the advertising model, you're freed from the corporate sort of overbears, but also it's about, you don't have to sell all these things because the economy is made to reward you, and also money going back into it gets burned, it benefits the users, keeps the supply low, keeps it manageable, rather than just airdrops and giving millions and billions of coins away.
Yeah, and that's sorry.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I remember, so like, you know, one of the things that was always kind of interesting to look at, if you know, I come pretty much from doing deep dives into like Ripple and XRP back in like 2017, 2018. And there was like a really cool platform they had, which was like Coil for like micropayments for, you know, basically like content creation. And I feel like it wasn't like, I think it might have been a situation where people weren't ready for something like that, to like use the technology in a certain way. So I'm curious, like, where you guys see like that kind of aspect going. Like, I think one of the big things that needs to kind of happen is that people, and I'll go back to this again, people don't just have to be aware that something is, you know, exists, but they have to like kind of see the value of using something like, you know, like a Panjea or like some of these other platforms that are trying to do what you guys are trying to accomplish. And Lee, I'm curious just your thoughts, like, where you know, do you think that people are getting sick of what's going on something like Twitter, to the point now where, you know, that maybe it is more of the right time to start using things that might have a, you know, maybe more of a value for their actual IP?
Yeah, so for sure. So the one thing that we haven't struggled with when we talk to people that are using these current platforms, they're like, oh, thankfully someone's doing something about this at last. And then you get the big heads and say, oh yeah, I came up with this idea ages ago. But it's, people know the problems, they're living with it every day. It's just they don't know how to fix it, and there's no real platforms to fix it, because you get like other social fi platforms come along, and they're not really anything different. They're just selling you a Patreon or a DM service. The same problems still exist. You've still got bots, you've still got like no visibility unless you're the top 0.5% of people. It's just, yeah, or not just that, you've got they're even replicating Web2 like platforms now to try and just move users across, but you're just going to move the same problems across. So yeah, so it's, when we get through to like the everyday person that's going to be using platforms like this, they're very receptive to the idea of Panjea. It's just, it's trying to get in front of enough people to create that movement.
Well, one thing that 100% we see happen right now is, and I can't even imagine being somebody new that's interested in blockchain or DLT, coming onto a platform like Twitter and trying to navigate in a successful way. Because like, you join a platform like Twitter and, you know, you see somebody that appears to have, you know, 100,000 followers, that's getting massive amounts of engagement. You're like, this person must really know what they're talking about. Like, and then you go down the rabbit hole there, and it's like, it's almost like, and this probably happens to most people. I mean, I know this has happened to me. I'm sure this happens to most people that have gotten into this space. The only way that you really learn is just by failing massively multiple times. And then you start learning little things along the way to be like, well, I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And it's got to, you know, we talk about mass adoption in this space all the time of the technology. And to get to that mass adoption kind of influx point, there's got to be a level of authenticity that comes along with it, and ease of use. And you take the other end of the spectrum where you've got amazing content like literally probably massively valuable content creators that are using a platform like X, and you look at how many views that, you know, they're getting organically compared to somebody that's just botting out everything, and they're totally kind of under the radar, just because people associate numbers with value. And I think that's a huge problem. Like, you can't associate likes, retweets, you know, impressions with value in this space, because most of it's not real. So I think when I look at like, when I hear about what you guys are, you know, are trying to build here, I think it could be like a huge win for some of like the content creators that are providing value and then you let the the actual human beings decide what's valuable instead of the actual bots arbitrarily just bump numbers up for stuff that may not be. I don't know if either of you guys want to maybe expand upon that, but it's just trying to point out some of the existing problems is kind of crazy.
Yes, like I said, on my time on Steam, I saw all of these problems with upvotes, downvotes, everything. So basically, you powered up your coins, which locked them for a 12-week period. Well, say locked them permanently, but then to unlock took 12 weeks. And how much like bag holding you had, so how big your bag was, impacted the weight of your vote. So you had this horrible problem with people would come up with amazing content, and then a whale would come along and go, yeah, they're competing with me, because everyone was competing for the same reward pool. So they just, the whale would come along, downvote, and just wipe out all of their rewards. So basically, if they had like $200, they just go zero. So you had this horrible toxic mentality of these guys just getting rid of anyone that looked like competition. And also then, because it was so hard, then you had this horrible toxic vote begging and jealous like nature. Why are you voting for them? Why are you voting for them? You voted for them twice. You haven't voted for me once. It's like there was no like sort of interaction with building any rapport. It was just straight up like jealousy begging, and it just created this horrible atmosphere. And then I mean it sort of showed you how non-decentralized it was when Justin Sun came and bought the Steam Teams tokens. Threw out all of the witnesses, replaced them with sock puppets, and just basically took over the entire network. So, which is why Hive ended up coming into play when it was forked off. But unfortunately, they forked off the same problems, the same toxic mentality and vote begging, and we needed to remove that with Panjea. So, one, how do we make sure that everyone's a bot, not a bot, or allowing people to game the system of bots? So that's our proof of life. So you got that. So you're proving that like each person owns their voice and is cryptographically proving that they're a person. And then you basically reward them for their attention. So views. So all you have to do is view and consume someone's content. If I consume your content, you deserve to get paid. Like it's as simple as that, because I've consumed it. But the good thing is I've consumed it with my attention, not with an upvote, not with having to pay for it, not with any of that stuff. One subscription gives you access to everything. And every day, all of the votes all the views are aggregated, and everyone gets paid accordingly based on their weight of the view pool to the daily reward pool. So it creates this. I'll probably end up consuming more content that I probably wouldn't have before, because I don't have to pay any more for it. All I'm paying for is my attention. So it gets rid of all of that horrible, oh no, they got more views. Well, more views probably be that, but then it's not vote based, it's not bottable, it's not got that up down vote, any of the toxic stuff. It's just you basically rewarding people for their attention.
So is it more of like, I think one of the other things that is always interesting to me is if you look at like governance aspects in this space, and like I think without getting too deep into the weeds with the VC stuff that kind of occurs naturally, but like it's always interesting to me where it's like, hey, we've got this governance token, but then like VCs who aren't incentivized at all to participate in any sort of meaningful governance, like have a ton of governance tokens and X, Y, and Z. Like you're kind of more talking about like here's a level playing field to an extent, and it's literally based on viewership, and there is like kind of the proof of life aspect too, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, Kieran will probably be able to explain more of the sort of how the network's structured and the reason it's structured in a way to stop people like you hear the term shadow ban, you hear the words like if your content isn't viewed by the first 1,000 people all the way to the end and commented and all that gets thrown into the hole, and basically it's impossible to find unless you've got a direct link. So Kieran will probably go over the how we've got around that basically.
Yeah, I think Lee said something that really I'd like to just magnify on there. And Lee just mentioned the idea of ownership. Panjea is about ownership, like the proof of life system that Lee's mentioned. We don't see it as a KYC or a kind of like way of tracking people's behavior or knowing who they are or being able to spy on them on the network. We see it as a kind of ownership. Like if you're going to put stuff up online and you're going to say it out loud in public, own it. Like be who you are. Like equally, like the site is community owned and all of the content is owned by the users. And so really Panjea, what Panjea is about really at its core is ownership. And because everything is owned by the people and the users and everyone who uses it, it allows us to do different things with it. And the main difference, like you mentioned Coil earlier, I think the big problem with Coil is that if I remember it rightly, that there was a kind of coil plugin on different sites. So it was very difficult to move from one piece of content that was on coil to other pieces of content that was on coil. You kind of had this coil usership and you kind of stumbled over bits of content. With Panjea, what we've done is taken the original Tim Berners-Lee model of the internet, which of course is the kind of nodal network, the kind of website and hyperlink model, and just transpose that into the Panjea user space. So any piece of content can be linked to any other piece of content. And it's these links between the pieces of content that control the navigation options when you're on a piece of content. That means that we can actually structure the network, not by some kind of dopamine infused gambling ritual that like says, you like this, you're going to like that. You know, like with YouTube showing you content that you've seen 5 times before because it thinks you might want to watch it again. We can actually show people content that's relevant, that educates them, that enriches them, that empowers them, that informs them. And that can be and that's not set by us. That's not set by the algorithm. That's set by the journalists, the creators, the musicians out there who decide where they want to place their content and how they want to structure their content. And because of that, it means that we can start using terms that have been forgotten. Remember information superhighway? Do you remember that term? Like, who uses that anymore? People don't even say World Wide Web anymore, indicating it's a web of information. Right? The internet.
It's the advert superhighway. That's the thing.
Well, this is it. And like yet again, like the internet. I'm just thinking about this. The internet seems to be this. We keep pushing back against the powers of centralized control, and centralized control keeps getting back in there. Like the original internet was set up by a bunch of guys who were basically radio hams. These were like CB radio guys who got on the internet and coded. Big parts of the internet was coded by hobbyists, and it still runs on that hobbyist kind of like architecture. And then over time, the forces of money have kind of got into it. And it's happened with blockchain as well. Like, you always talk to me about how blockchain was created in 2008 as a kind of response to the problems of collateralized debt obligations masquerading as money, and that we needed to have money that had real value. And that's where the blockchain came from. And it's strange now that the blockchain is now almost being used, and that every single company that's got blockchain technology just wants to use it to support the existing financial architecture of the world. You know, we want to go and like partner, WorldCom or you know, the IMF, or I don't know. Like, wouldn't it be fantastic? You know, and it's strange. It's strange. I still think that there's juice in the tank to really disrupt the centralized systems of power, and the way to do that is through actually not being such a hippie that you ignore the money, which is kind of what the original internet crowd did, and said, well, actually, how do we apply decentralization to money? I think we're in the perfect situation to do that.
Yeah, and I think you brought up an interesting point too. Well, earlier, I mean, I'm just looking even right now, like, and I forget when this shift was, but using a platform like Twitter, there was a point where they shifted to having the option to switch between, I don't even know if people, I'm sure a lot of people realize this. If you're on your phone, you can switch between the For You feed that you get on Twitter, and you can, or the following feed on Twitter. And it's always amazing to me if I look at the For You feed on Twitter, like, you come into this space, and let's say you're coming in just to learn about, you know, digital assets, blockchain, distributed ledger. Obviously, you're learning over time, and you're making mistakes, and you're doing X, Y, and Z, all the normal things that occur. But then once you start learning, that For You feed essentially becomes your battle against an algorithm to try to get that feed to look to where you need it to kind of get to again. So yeah, I mean, we could kind of go down the rabbit hole. I mean, I guess, Lee, I'm curious your stance too, because you've been in this space for a while. I mean, outside of the SocialFi aspects, I think that we have seen a lot of just kind of wider actual adoption of the technology. And I talk to Darren, helps us to co-host these all the time. I think that it's almost to the point that we've become like desensitized to the amount of like actual adoption that is occurring. And I'm just curious your thoughts on that, because I think that, like, if you look at like some of the and I understand like the announcements lead to hype and everything else and all this other stuff, but almost any one of these announcements that's coming out from all these ecosystems on like a daily, bi-daily, weekly basis would have totally driven the entire blockchain space back in 2017, 2018 for like months. What's it been to kind of watch from your standpoint, like the actual kind of adoption, even though it's, I guess, slower than a lot of people would expect, it's certainly happening.
About that, cut out just as you were finishing that question.
I guess the question is, since you've been here since 2013, what's it been to watch kind of the actual evolution of adoption? Because it's certainly like it's ramped up. Like, you know, like I said, any one of these announcements that we almost see on a weekly basis now would have driven the entire blockchain market in 2017, even for like months.
Yeah. So, I mean, imagine like we met every day for 2 weeks. Every day I walk in, go, all right, bang, and punch you in the face. But the second week, you'd be learning to duck, right? So this is kind of what's happening. And back in the day, like they would just, and they did just go out, like especially in 2017, they just went out and go, let's just get Lionel Messi, put him in an NFT, whatever, get him to wear a casino.com or whatever, crypto.com t-shirt, and then everything's good, and then everyone goes crazy. Whereas everyone's seen that now time and time again. And it's not just that, everyone's promised the world and delivered them a post-it note. And there's a lot of this adoption here's going on, but it's a combination of like nothing burgers or getting dumped on, or just generally like not over promising. Or I mean, as well, like how many projects, you know yourself, you research a lot, how many projects in the space have just got junk tokenomics? They just let you just let's get an ice cream truck and put it on the blockchain. Let's get an action RPG and put it on the blockchain. Like there's no thought behind it apart from the fact there'll be a magical internet token behind it with no tokenomics that they'll just keep pumping into the market, and speculators give it value. Like I think people have just seen too much of it now. And like Kieran said, like the corporate world has taken over a vast majority of blockchain, and they're just waiting. I mean, their bags are there. It's like walking into a room and there's that big bucket of paint over on the top of the door. It's people have seen it time and time again, and then because it's decentralized, you can see it. Like you can see when all these unlocks happen. And I think it's just scared everyone away. I think it's such a sort of conundrum because you need real world adoption, but the real world, all they care about is money. So you want their help, but at the same time, if you get too much of their help, then they're just going to turn it into a corporate model that benefits them and doesn't benefit anyone else. And then you end up with Spotify with 1% of users, under 1%, getting actually any money out of the platform. So you have to find this middle ground where you create a circular economy, an ecosystem that has its own value, and then you're not like people can buy into it, but they can participate, but they can't own it, they can't take it over, they can't change the model of it. I think that's the problem with, like we've seen the rise of blue chip crypto. Like these are companies, they need to make, do you know what I mean, revenue. They need to do this stuff. It's not some guy in his bedroom with 20 cans of Red Bull anymore. It's actual businesses that have got taxes to pay, staff to pay. So they have to have this crazier model, but it's scarier to a retail investor.
It's almost one of the scary things to look at. Like I think is, you know, for like meaningful adoption to occur, at least in my opinion. And then I know we've got about 20 minutes left, so I want you guys to kind of walk through a couple of these things for us, and I'll give a shout out. And I know we were talking about stuff before, but I mean, shout out to AZERO for allowing us to, you know, or helping us to do these types of spaces. But if you look at like content creation out there, and if you look at like what does really well, like the algorithms obviously kick everything, and for meaningful adoption to occur in this space, I like fervently believe that people need to be using what's built on these networks. But if you look at the content creation, the incentivization for content creation on a platform like YouTube is, like Kieran was saying, it's the hype, right? And it's the hype twice a day to pick up on the YouTube algorithm, strategically place your content twice a day, get people all motivated, get people all X, Y, and Z. The scary thing about that is, and I don't think a lot of people think of this, even if content creators did want to talk about what's being built on these networks and showcase that and everything else, it totally disrupts their ad revenue model in a way that it would ruin their ability to survive, because they've built up their business based on this twice a day Let's optimize based on the YouTube algorithm. So then where does the valuable content go? And I've like heard people say that, like, from the bigger account standpoint on YouTube, like, I've tried talking about what people were building and my views went drastically down because the people weren't getting hyped up about about nonsense. And it's just like, that to me is absolutely wild. Like, something's got to totally shift. We talk about adoption in this space. Adoption's not going to happen from people being hyped up. I mean, at the end of the day, adoption is going to start happening from people using the technology. Otherwise, we're just going to have these boom and bust cycles happen again and again and again and again. And maybe we get a little bit higher on the adoption curve every time, but it's got to come down to like actually showcasing value and people using what's built. So I want to kind of maybe walk through just a little bit of some of this stuff. If you guys want to walk us through it real quick, and we can go from there. So, all right. So I know you guys have your I don't know where you want to start, Kieran, but I know you guys have Panjea IO here. I mean, if anybody wants to check it out, they can go to Panjea.io. This isn't a paid for endorsement of Panjea, just sharing this for everybody to watch. You want me to go to the product deck though, Kieran?
Go to the product deck, and Lee and I will just talk you through the product deck. So if you just zoom in on it, just like you should be able to use the Google Drive button at the bottom there in the bottom center. You should be able to, yeah. So if you just go to the first slide, that's the product guide. So here we have the home page. Let's have a look at the home page. What this is a representation of the latest content that's on Panjea. So you can see up on the top right corner, Simon, he's our design lead. He has just left his wallet in there. So he's kind of clipped his wallet there, and like, we are mobile ready at the moment. So this has kind of got like the latest content that's been added to the network. At the moment, we want to kind of have a nodal network mind map layout, but because we're just developing for MVP, we've just developed this kind of front page look because it kind of has that social media familiarity that people will want to see, so they can get into content straight away on the site.
Yeah, I think to add in as well, just before we leave this page, is the problem and also the benefit is that some people are going to come across this and go, it just looks like a normal website. That's the point. Like, it shouldn't be hard. Does it just happen? Like, the fact it's on the blockchain should be, that's just a byproduct. It's on the blockchain because it means it's decentralized, can't be controlled, can't be stopped, and we can't own it. That's the thing. We're not Facebook. We're not like this big corporate that want to tell you what to do, what to see, what to create. The fact it's on the blockchain is just happens. It just happens to be on the blockchain because it's the best technology to do it on. The actual interacting and daily use of it should be as easy as possible.
Yeah, as intuitive as possible. So, like as we talked about before, we're going to obviously have this nodal structure. We mentioned about Tim Berners-Lee and the information superhighway. Well, in order for us to help structure that, we're going to have category nodes. So just as well as the whole kind of structure of Panjea is spread across this nodal network, in order to help people find their way through the different parts of the network, we're going to have category nodes. So this picture here is the category node page, where you can choose which node you go into. So if you're interested in cars, you can go in on the car node, find more about car content, find the latest car content. So that's kind of like just how we're working with the structure at the minute.
Yeah, and as over time, like we're going to have governance as part of the platform, like it should be. But the difference with us is we're not asking you to hold thousands and thousands of coins. If you've got a subscription, you get the same vote as everyone else. No one's got that sort of whale power to overrun you. But changes to the platform will come via that. So obviously, gateway nodes, all that sort of stuff can be voted on and added in.
Yeah, because it may be. This is just like us trying to get, like Lee said, we're just trying to give people the tools in the first instance, so that they can use Panjea in a simple, intuitive way. But if they come on the platform and they discover new ways to do it, or there's new ways that they want to structure content, then we can change it completely for them. Yeah. So it's this is just simply like, like our starting proof of concept MVP product. It's taken us 3 years to get here, and of course it's taken us a long time because this is fully functioning. I mean, you go on there, and there was something incredibly special, Solomon. I can't tell you what it was like. It was like this light bulb went on when I went on there one night and I posted a piece of content, and the next day I come onto Panjea, I log into my profile, and there it is. There's a bunch of tokens waiting for me, and of course they're just made up test tokens. But the fact that I logged in and there's like 3 pieces of content, and here's how much how much you've been rewarded for in your tokens. It just is an incredible feeling, and that works. That works. That token distribution system from the emission pool works, and it works.
I'm curious, Kieran. So like, and this is just because I know that we spent, and most people don't even know this through Genfinity, we spent a good, oh God, it was probably like a year building kind of a social app. And one of the things that we were always thinking about is like, okay, so like, let's say that, and we didn't, exactly have kind of the model. This was like two and a half years ago. We didn't have the model that you guys have where you kind of go in and kind of click for the node based interests and everything else, or the nodal based interests. And like let's say I want to click and I want to learn more about cars. When I click on that and my feed starts populating with, information about cars or posts about cars or images about cars or videos, how do you guys over time figure out what's going to populate first in a user's feed? Is it going to be based on the amount of views that somebody else has, or is it going to be time based?
This is going deep into a Panjea. So Panjea has the concept of what I call a vector, and this is kind of day 2 stuff, but we're prepared to talk to you about it, man. So like, if you imagine that 2 pieces of content have got a link between them, right? I call that, I don't just see it as a link, I see it as a vector. So we can strengthen that link. So let's say a piece of content has 6 links coming off it to other pieces of content, and those links have different link strengths. Well, we can give you in your navigation options the link that is based. So your top navigation option will be the strongest link. And in order to curate the network, users will have the option to strengthen links. So it won't just be a case that 2 things will be linked together. If Lee, for instance, posted up like a news story, and you came along, Solomon, and you said, hang on a minute, I've got a video of this news story happening. And I was like, man, this video that Solomon's posted really validates Lee's news story. I think these need to be linked. I could go in and I could strengthen the link between those 2 pieces of content. And then if users came and used that link between the 2 pieces of content, I'd get paid. So I get paid for curating it. And I call that concept the concept of a vector. And this is how it works. Like, so over time, like as Panjea develops, like the ultimate goal of Panjea will be to take users into a 3D space that they can browse with VR, where they're looking at different content, like in a content universe, where they can actually see the content and like look at the content connections between different pieces of content and zoom in and zoom out on those pieces of content. That would be the ultimate way for people to browse Panjea. That's maybe a day 2 or day 3.
Yeah, sorry for throwing you a curveball. But I think it's interesting. Like, I think of it as like, with all the, the stuff with Genfinity trying to basically bootstrap out a media company from the onset. We failed and succeeded so many times. The one thing that we've kind of learned is that feedback loops are really important. And to bootstrap out like the value of like content, where it's one of the reasons why if you see that we do a podcast or a space, normally we'll do an article after it and follow it up and kind of try to tie as much in together as possible, where it's not just kind of a one and done type thing. So like, I think when I look at this and maybe envision of where you guys are going with it over time, it's like not only the best individual piece of content wins out, but like the way that content comes together almost makes the content more authentic in a sort of way, because you have a lot of different participation within the original piece that adds a bunch of context. It's pretty interesting. So yeah.
The good part is as well, sorry Kieran, the good part is that we don't decide that. Like, we're not doing it based on the revenue that we're going to earn for your post, because we don't. That's the thing. Users get to sort of link everything and get to say what is relevant. So like you're not relying on YouTube thinking that your content's going to make them a load of money, basically. So the community can, in a decentralized way, really structure the network in a really good and unique way.
Well, what it does to, I think that's interesting too, and I hope we don't run out of time, guys. One of the things, like, so I've gotten asked this so many times in the past, is like, how do you build an account organically, or try to build an account organically? And one of the things you do, not just like the feedback loop stuff, but people or projects with similar interests, like you want to try to involve them in whatever content you're finding. So I used to do like deep dives and research as much as possible. One of the things that I tried to do every time is like, who else is researching? Who else is doing similar stuff to what I'm doing? I'm going to tag them into some of the stuff that I find and see if they're willing to like engage with it, because, I spent hours and hours trying to find this piece of content, or trying to deep dive into something and find a piece of information that nobody else has. Maybe they'll think it's valuable. I think that's interesting too, when you get into like this type of aspect. Like, I can see all sorts of user interactions together, and then you start kind of forming like almost like people that you want to engage with more, or posts that you want to engage with more. So I find it pretty cool. So let's go through like some of this other stuff here, guys, because I do fear that we're going to be running out of time. I told you guys at the onset, when we start getting into the weeds, like I've talked to Kieran on the side multiple times over the past couple of years, and we can really go down the rabbit hole with discussions. So I'll share my screen, Kieran. You can continue walking us through here.
Yeah, so this is like your public profile. It's got your content on it. So if I was to come to, like, so there's Simon Roddice there. He's the man with his glasses on. This is some of the content that he's posted. Yeah, and then like this next one, this is a piece of content, a piece of text content. So just keep going. There's nothing much to write home about. Here's audio content. So the audio player, which is working. So this is like a day 2 piece. This is this is a visualization of what the link network will look like. So whether or not this is what it looks like in sort of flat 2D, or whether we change that, we don't know. But it kind of gives you an idea of how content is structured, and content will be structured on Panjea. So this is the system data. I mean, this is the bit that like your crypto guys are going to really love. As you can see how much the daily reward pool is, how much the seeds are. What's this? The searches that have gone on, the seed types. So you can see the data that's coming out of Panjea, and obviously that works. That absolutely.
And also,
works.
again, to go back to like the sort of the traditional social and creative platforms that are out there, they hide most of this apart from your stats. Like, so we're just it's true crypto. It's completely decentralized. Everything's transparent. If everyone's looking up cars or bunny pictures, then you'll get to see it here. So it's turning like the model on its head. Like nobody knows what stats and stuff YouTube get, where it's all guesswork. So
yeah, this is
the point
really,
of crypto, isn't it?
Yeah, this is really interesting. I was going to ask you guys, because I mean, I haven't seen this before. So I know you shared it with me like a week ago when we were talking about this space, but this is the first time I'm looking at it. And you look at like the user portal. So like for those of you guys that don't know, I mean, obviously for those that are doing YouTube videos and things like that, you have your like YouTube studio where you can go in there and you can like track analytics and all that other stuff. But the algorithm of YouTube or a platform like YouTube, or the algorithm of a platform like Twitter or X, it's kind of a guessing game. So like I know people even go in and they're like, that are doing YouTube videos consistently, and they're like, what are the tags that I should be putting on my video, because it changes every couple of months. What's going to get me the most views? This is really interesting because this is directly, I mean, you said this is going to be accessible to people using the platform. So like, let's say that I'm starting to do content on Panjea and I'm pushing, I want to do X, Y, and Z content. And I'm pushing that content and I'm not getting as much traction as I want. I can look at this and be like, okay, well, the people aren't engaging with the type of content that I'm pushing out. So maybe I should be switching based on the actual metrics of what's going on the platform, which I think is massively interesting.
Yeah,
exactly.
Or even more so, like with Panjea, you should just go and find a discussion where people are talking about what you want to be talking about and add to that discussion, rather than just being another voice in the wilderness. Like, what's going on in the discussion? Come and find what people are talking about. Add your knowledge to it. Like, what are the current aspects of of any particular topic or subject or category being discussed, go and add to it. Content is everybody's. You can add to it, and like everybody benefits from you adding to the content. So by you adding your content and making things more interesting, that people are more likely to find the content that you're linking to, so that everybody does well by you doing well. So rather than it being a competitive model where it's either look at my stuff or don't look at their stuff, like it's look at my stuff and look at their stuff.
Yep. Walk us through the user dashboard and we'll get through this with you guys here.
So this is literally like how much Si's been making. So you can see there he's got his edit, his profile, he's got his wallet, his transactions.
Yeah, so this will be the private side of the user's profile, so where they see all their earnings, or they can edit their content, they can update stuff. This is like the non-public facing version, essentially.
So obviously messaging and DMs.
Yeah, I mean, it's old school, but people want it. And I can understand why. You can send your mates links. You can do all that sort of stuff.
The DeFi aspect.
Yeah, so we're going to have incentivized liquidity pools from launch for the benefit of people like if at the beginning, it's obviously the price is going to be lower whilst the network expands. So you can park all of your earnings in the liquidity pool if you want and make some extra bank on that.
Obviously important governance.
Yep. And like we said, it's subscription based. So your governance vote has exactly the same weight as the whales would have. It's a fair system.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because I think you can look at a ton of different platforms and
governance isn't governance if you can just buy your way in, right?
Well, no, 100%. But then also kind of without having some sort of authenticity, the one wallet, one vote thing, I'm not normally a huge fan of either, because then it's like, okay, how many wallets does this person have? Or how many wallets does this account have? How many bots are, all those.
Yeah, but that's where proof of life comes in, because they'll have one wallet. So that's the thing. Yeah. That's why you can get away with one equal vote, because otherwise it would be gameable. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like if you attach it to an actual identity that's kind of private and shielded and all that other stuff, that actually does make kind of the one wallet aspect interesting. So, yeah, this is pretty cool here. This system data. I think that this, you don't see this anywhere. I think it's really cool because it actually gives like the level playing field aspect for people to participate and figure out what's moving the needle on the platform. So yeah. And if you guys, just to share your guys' X account. So if anybody's interested, again, not paid promotion for Panjea here, but this is a really cool discussion. Go to @Panjea_IO. And then their site is Panjea.io as well. I always like to ask as we ramp down here, and I hope we do these again. Well, let me get into this real quick. Is like I won't get into roadmaps but I will ask you guys broadly where you guys are at as far as the platform is concerned.
So we've just finished the closed beta testing. So this has been a really great. Can we just say thank you for having us on the show, Solomon? You've always been someone who's really supported Panjea from an early time, and you're always having us on loads of shows. We really appreciate all the support you guys have given us. As a smaller project that's entirely self-funded, it's really, really tough to get the breaks at the moment. Like everybody is just like, like trying to carve up your corpse as much as they can to use for their hype machine. So like, we're just really, really appreciative. And like, it's a really big thing for us that we will be actually getting our first cohort of third-party users who come from the Aleph AZERO community. They're going to be starting to use that next Wednesday. We'd love to also tell everybody that if people out there want to get on Panjea and want to come on there and create content on there, as part of our test audience, then we'll be taking applications. So we'll be starting an application process. We don't want everybody to be coming on there. We'll be looking at each application. We're looking for a select few who are going to come on and help us build the platform in the early days. And that's going to be happening very shortly. So That's where we are. It works. It's up. It's got a few bugs left to be squashed. It's not perfect. It doesn't have the linking system that we really want to display. It has the linking system there working behind the scenes. It doesn't have the HUD for it, but it works. Most importantly, the content reward system works. And yeah, and it feels different. It feels different. Like, I hate to say it feels like the internet used to feel. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and it's great. So we're there. We're there. Like, this is happening.
Awesome. No, I would love to try it out as well. So, and then Lee, any
Solomon, as of next week, we'll get you on there. We'll get you on there. We'll get Genfinity content on there. We'd love to have you on there as the first crypto creator, the first official crypto news channel. You can come on. You're welcome. You can officially be our first crypto news. You heard it here first. You heard it on Genfinity. We'll have Genfinity can be the first crypto news channel. And we'll always be able to say that you were the first crypto news channel on Panjea. How about that?
I'm down for it, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm excited to get in there and trial out the platform. Lee, any forward-looking statements that you might have? It's nice meeting you, by the way. I know that you and I haven't met before, and it's always cool to talk to some OGs in the digital asset space. But anything you're looking forward to, whether it's within Panjea, the AZERO ecosystem, industry-wide, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think like I've always said, like before, I always get super excited about disruptive technologies that actually have a reason to be. Like I mean, like there's so much crypto out there. It's either speculation or it just does the same thing. It's just a digital asset transfer. I'm excited about this. Is the thing. This is our chance to change this corporate model, to change the big boss has the say, and like what he says goes, and that's it. This is our chance. Like this, there's never been a better chance in history for the average everyday person to just go out there and change the world into something that they want to see. So support the projects that are trying to do that. By all means, you can have a side hustle about trying to get a moon coin and be a moon boy on the side, but just try and look for products that aren't Ponzi's, that aren't like pump and dumps, that aren't really using crypto like it should be used. Like, crypto is a disruptive to the technology. It's not just this put a hat on something and become a millionaire. It's like just support the real crypto bros, basically.
So we're not going to see a Panjea
Pange Doggy Pange, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, hang out with us for a second as I end this stream, guys, just to make sure everything uploads. And really appreciate your guys' time again. For the audience down here, if you guys want to check out Panjea, go to Panjea. That's PANJEA.io. I can give these guys a follow on X at Panjea_IO as well. Really appreciate you guys sharing some of the aspects you guys are building behind the scenes with us. And looking forward to trying out the platform. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Kieran. I know that we have side discussions all the time about the craziness of all this stuff and society and everything else. And again, want to give a shout out to AZERO for allowing us to make these types of interviews possible. And good luck, guys. Looking forward to everything coming out of Panjea. So I'm going to end this. So hang out with us for just a second, and we'll go from there. We'll see you guys next time.